Welcome back to Shaw Spotlight. I'm here with Dr. Calli Thompson with Pet Tips, and today we're going to talk about some spring environmental hazards with our pets. Calli, what's one of the biggest hazards that we need to worry about in the spring with our pets?
I'd say the first thing that comes to mind for me is heat. So while we love the heat, it's a lot easier for us to seek shade and get cool and manage our temperature accordingly. I think we have to remember for our pets, they don't have the ability to get rid of that excess heat that their bodies generate when they're out in the sun or out in really humid weather. So we have to be really careful about when we exercise our pets, especially if your animal is a dark color or has got a long, heavy coat. That would be like us trying to go for a walk in our winter parkas, when it's 25, 30 degrees outside, and they can really easily overheat because of that. So I think paying close attention to when we exercise our pets, really making sure that they have access to not only somewhere where they can go to get cool if they're going to be outside in the yard, being aware of where sun hits in your yard, putting up or having a shaded area where your pet can seek some refuge from the sun and from the heat, and a lot of access to fresh water. That's a really important way of how our pets cool themselves off. And so we need to make sure they have cold, fresh water at all times, so they don't end up in a really life-threatening situation.
I know one thing I think everyone needs to think about as well is leaving your pets in a vehicle when it's warm out. Because I know myself, no, we don't want to be stuck in a vehicle with the windows up, or just open a crack and in a hot vehicle. So I think it's equally as dangerous for pets.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you take that heat and then you centralize it into a car situation where there's no airflow, it's a disaster. So I think there definitely comes a time when, taking your pet to the grocery store or out shopping with you just is no longer a good idea. In addition to that, I think a lot of our local businesses in Thunder Bay have done a really good job of also promoting pet-friendly spaces. So I know a lot of the local businesses, I think it's a campaign through the Thunder Bay District Health Unit or Animal Services locally here. And they will actually allow you to bring your pet into the store if it's an appropriate situation. So if you are going to take your pet on a car ride in July with you, maybe only if you're going somewhere where you can actually bring them inside to cool down with you.
Right. Now, all of the rivers and the lakes are open now, and I know a lot of people fishing is going to start up soon. Are there any water hazards that you need to think about with your pets?
For sure. So I think at this time of the year, our pets will look at the water and maybe not understand how cold the water is, right? So in early spring, the worry would be a dog, jumping in, not realizing how cold it is, or water levels are also up a lot higher right now. So currents are going to be really strong. And I think we want to be really careful about putting our pets in a compromising situation like that. Even in nicer weather, so when the lakes are warmer and the water level is down, not all of our pets are really great swimmers. And as goofy as they might look, life jackets can definitely be life-saving for them. So really knowing your pet, knowing where you're going, if you guys are going to go hiking or go for a boat ride, understanding the waterway, like where you are, what you're doing, and what is your pet's capability. And it's always way easier to err on the side of caution and use a life jacket.
Now, with the warmer weather also becomes bugs. And bugs are something you need to think about with your pets as well, because I know when you're taking your dog for a walk in the bush, ticks are a big hazard.
Yeah, we live in a community in Northwestern Ontario where ticks, and specifically the disease that some ticks can transmit, which is Lyme's disease, is a real problem. So I think first and foremost, you need to have a good prevention strategy for how you're going to keep your pet safe from ticks and potentially Lyme's disease. That can be a combination of using a Lyme's disease vaccine with them, in addition to tick preventatives. So tick preventatives are sort of designed to kill the tick when they bite the dog. so that they don't have a chance to transmit Lyme's disease, but also so that when they come into the home, they can't have a tick transfer off of them and then find you and I as a suitable host, right? Because that's a safety issue for us as humans as well. And you're creepy crawling around on the screen. A lot of people hate it, right? So yeah, I think that's probably the one of the biggest insect issues we have in Northwestern Ontario.
Now, what about fleas? How does your pet contract fleas?
So fleas are, I'd say not as much of a concern, but still something we want to be conscious about. Fleas don't usually live really well in the environment based on our weather patterns and how cold it gets here. We don't see a lot of animals picking up fleas from the grass. They typically, though, can pick up fleas from another animal that has it, or an indoor environment that has unfortunately been infested with it. And there's no vaccine that you can use for fleas. Managing that risk is really knowing what your pet's lifestyle is, who they're hanging around with, where they're going, and using some type of preventative. And a lot of the preventatives that help us kill ticks also will help us with flea management as well. But again, having that conversation with your veterinarian about what is your pet's lifestyle, what are the risks, and how do we need to manage those?
Now, are there any other parasites that pet owners need to be aware of?
I'd say that even though they can't transmit significant disease to us in our area, some dogs and some cats, if they're spending a lot of time outside, can be really just sensitive to insect bites. So flies, mosquitoes, and that can be really challenging from them. They get rashes. Some of them can even have allergic reactions. There are some really good make-at-home topical sprays that you can use, very similar to the ones that you can use it with young children, to help expel those bugs while you're outside. Some people will also use different types of almost flea repellent clothing or insect repellent clothing for their pets. My worry about that is the overheating risk of it. Those things are going to, sure, protect you from anything outside, but during that weather, I just don't think they're a great idea. I've seen them marketed locally, and I'm not a really big fan of them myself.
Now, you mentioned something interesting to me that I never would have thought of, is that when you travel with your pet, you need to think about regional diseases.
Yeah, so there are certain diseases, for example, that we have in Northwestern Ontario that if you go to Saskatchewan or if you go to Ottawa, we wouldn't run into, and vice versa. So probably one of the biggest ones, like we've talked about, we have Lyme's disease and ticks in Northern Ontario. One thing we don't have in our mosquito population up here is a disease called heartworm. So heartworm is a really serious parasitic infection that is transmitted by mosquitoes. As far as we're aware, we're really lucky right now that we don't have a population of mosquitoes in Thunder Bay that can transmit heartworm to our pets. However, if you're traveling into Minnesota, if you're going west into Manitoba, or even areas of Southern Ontario, they have endemic heartworm problems. So really knowing where you're going, having that conversation with your veterinarian to make sure if you're traveling during mosquito season to an area where that could be a risk for your pet, we do something to ensure your pet can't pick that up and then bring it back to Thunder Bay with them.
Like I said, I never would have thought of that. So thank you so much. And thank you so much for talking with me and helping pet owners keep their pets safe.
Thanks, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.